Reverend Crystal Cox here, and this is the book. It's called Nerve by William G. Clifford. It's 1926. Okay. Feeling at ease under all conditions. First of all, let's see if we can get at the real reason for this trepidation in meeting people face to face. We know that it exists, but if we can find out just why it exists and how it all comes about, this will help us greatly in applying methods to overcome it. Basically, this embarrassment all comes about from a feeling of inferiority on our part. We think or feel sure that the individual we are to face is so greatly superior to us in one way or more ways that we seriously doubt our ability to meet him or her on an equal footing and to hold our own. This feeling of inferiority is brought about in either one or both of two ways. The first way is by the thoughts we think, which either cause us to belittle ourselves or to so glorify and magnify the importance of the other person that we are bound to appear inferior by comparison. So we kind of set the stage ourselves. Whatever you think about a situation before you get there is very important. If you've read some of Raymond Grace's stuff, Raymon Grace, he's a dowser, talks about kids upstairs. He doesn't talk about kids upstairs, but projecting somewhere before you get there. Like visualize how you want the meeting to go. Picture the room, kind of clear the energy before you get there. It works in this way. A man will have an appointment to meet someone of business or social standing above the average. It tickles his vanity to feel that he is able to meet a person of such importance. He mentally figures that he himself must be important to be able to claim the attention of and the interest of such a big man. Remembering this was written in 1926. Big men. I've changed some of the words to women too, but right there the whole trouble starts. In the effort, conscious or unconscious, to impress himself, and possibly his friends, with his own importance, he mentally starts to magnify the importance and the greatness of the man he is to meet. For he figures that quite naturally, the greater the man he is to see, the greater he himself must be in order to be able to meet him. And so it comes about that long before the interview, our friend has built up in his imagination an exaggerated picture of a Superman of transcendental ability and qualities which no man or dozen men have ever possessed. Quite naturally, he feels small and inferior by comparison with the great, noble, and supernormal individual his imagination has created. And in this attitude, he sets forth to meet his man, completely licked, subdued, and disorganized long before he ever sets his eyes on him, which I would, of course, reworded as defeated. We defeat ourselves before we get somewhere with our imaginations of what can happen. And so why not imagine the best case scenario? Oftentimes we worry about what could happen, but our worry is like all the negative things that could happen. Instead of using the magic of the worry energy to create what could possibly happen that you actually might like. For one to mentally underestimate himself and to overestimate the individual who actually is, or even appears to be, of real importance is a common condition. Oh, and then there's this big old picture. The way he sees the man to call upon, okay. Remembering, of course, written in 1926. Okay, it says the fear is inherited. Most people do it, yet foolish and unsound though it is the individual who makes either or both of these mistakes is personally not to blame. He is swayed by a psychological condition over which he has no control. That is, until he has trained himself otherwise. So we're training yourself to listen to every thought, pay attention to the dialogue that's going on, and don't let it automatically happen. You know the influence of ancestry or inheritance upon the individual. And that's how I talk about in a lot of stuff, of clearing the ancestral lines. Okay, you know the influence of ancestry or inheritance upon the individual, that you are what you are today because of what your ancestors were. You had nothing to say about your type of body, whether slim, thick, or stout, nor about the color of your eyes, hair, or complexion. You inherited your body build and your color from your ancestors. You had no say in the matter. That's the physical side. Now for the mental. You know that until recent generations, our ancestors as a race were oppressed, exploited, and held down by the governing class. Until recently, these guys didn't know about the lockdown yet, 1926. They were bluffed into believing that kings and the ruling classes were infinitely better and altogether superior to them. I don't think we've moved too far on that. Anyway, the Great Awakening's happening and everyone is awakening. Hence the Great... The ruling classes forced this bluff on the people by means of titles, styles of dress, artificial standards of society, and a lot of flub-dub magnificence. I like that, flub-dub. Today we laugh at this. I laugh at the laughing, because if this author knew about the lockdown, it'd be like, well, no, today we're still working through this. Okay, today we laugh at this, apparently. We know it to be bunk. But just as we inherit our type of body, so do we inherit our state of mind. Our ancestors had a high respect for even fear, and a respect or fear of people in authority. Recent researchers in the field of psychoanalysis prove that even today, most people have an undue respect for or actual fear of anyone in a position of authority. This is so relevant today to the Great Awakening that's happening now with the coronavirus. They may not realize it consciously, they may not have this fear, but nevertheless they have it, planted deep in their subconscious mind, inherited from their ancestors. That is why so few people get the rich rewards they are entitled to. They know they are worth more money, but they dislike to face the boss. They know they have the ability to hold a higher position in life, but lack the nerve to go after it. Tens of thousands of natural-born moneymakers and leaders of men and women are today held down to the ordinary in life simply because they are bluffed by other men. And that's what we're experiencing now in this Great Awakening, is that the politics, the doctors, the health board, the scientists have all been bluffing us with their opinions and their experience, and it goes completely against what we know to be true for ourselves. And so, even though this was written in 1926, and like 100 years ago, we are now coming out of this bluff. So the politicians are being exposed, the doctors are being exposed, the schools are being exposed, which would have been in the past the kings and queens. And the kings and queens are being exposed. So all of society is getting their nerve. Okay, the same way with society. Splendid men and women by the thousands find themselves unable to enter high social circles simply because of an inherited state of mind. Right, so they don't think they're good enough. And they believe in higher or lower states. But great as this inherited handicap is, it can quickly and easily be overcome by the use of certain methods which will now be clearly explained to you. There is an old military maxim which reads that we should never underestimate the strength of the enemy. The maxim has paraphrased to apply to sizing up people we meet. Okay, so that's what this is called. Okay, how people are kept down and then sizing up people we meet. So the maxim has paraphrased to apply to business and social life to read, always give the other man credit for knowing too much instead of too little. It's a poor rule that won't work both ways, and likewise it's a poor maxim that can't be reversed. As a strict matter of fact, most people not only know considerably less than you imagine they know, but also much less than they give the impression of knowing. Every man of wide experience with people will at once recognize the utter truth of his statement. So in setting forth to meet your big man, don't let your imagination run away with you. Instead of creating a mental picture of a Superman who is a paragon of wisdom and invested with all sorts of marvelous qualities, observe instead the following maxim. Always remember that the other man probably knows much less than you think he knows, and probably is much less important than you think he is. That will give you the right start. It will stop you from becoming overawed and feeling inferior to your man before you even meet him. For it is a fact that regardless of the decorations and titles individuals may possess, and the trappings, stage effects, and evidence of importance and position with which they may be surrounded, most people are extremely ordinary. Get that fact clearly in mind. Okay. Real genius is so rare as to be comparatively non-existent. But this book's kind of yeah. Another way in which a feeling of inferiority is produced is by the thoughts the other person causes us to think, either by the stage setting he has built up around himself, or by what he says he does. It is a fundamental trait of animal and human nature to attempt to throw fear into the heart of one's opponent, or to exaggerate one's own power and importance, which amounts to the same thing, with the object of gaining a decided advantage over him. A dog's bark is invariably worse than his bite. In fact, a barking dog seldom bites. He barks to throw fear into the heart of his opponent. Primitive man took his cue from the animal kingdom and bedecked himself with animal skins and horns and painted himself with weird, devilish-looking colors when waging war. In pre-modern warfare, the blare of trumpets and bugles, the spine-chilling battle cries, and the brightly colored uniforms and trappings were all intended to unsettle and terrorize one's opponent. And in modern warfare, we have propaganda. All the visible evidences of truth, all designed to impressive statements, frequently misstatements, hearing the enemy with his own inferiority and our marked superiority, in other words, to strike fear into his heart and to demoralize him. With royalty, we see the same principle applied in different ways. Kings and emperors attire themselves in magnificent fabrics, right? So they bedazzle themselves yeah. So the lesson here is to project yourself into the reality that you want. Picture things how you want. Don't picture that someone knows more, they're better than you. I had never read this book. I find it very interesting. Let's see. The self-assurance that wins respect. Okay. To make a favorable first impression on your man, in other words, the person you're going to meet, is naturally the first thing you will try to do, which is quite as it should be, up to a certain point. But look out that you are not forced to pay the great price of an unfavorable interview for a good first impression. This can easily come about unless you watch yourself carefully. Most people seek to make a strong first impression by tensing themselves mentally and physically with the idea of putting a keen edge on their personality. Let us see what there is to this method. You have often seen acrobats and tumblers take smashing falls which would severely sprain the muscles or break the bones of the average man. Yet these professionals can take hard smashes and be none the worse for it. When the average man is about to fall, he instantly tenses himself in an effort to prevent the fall. It is in this tensing of the muscles that the damage is done. A taut string, rope, or wire is easily snapped, and a tense muscle is easily sprained by a blow or fall and often torn loose from its ends. You know that it is extremely difficult to break a slack string, rope, or wire by a blow, and similarly, relaxed muscles and tendons can be subjected to severe strain without injury. That is the secret of the acrobat. He falls with his muscles relaxed. Incidentally, this is why an intoxicated man can repeatedly take smashing falls without injury, simply because his muscles and tendons are relaxed. This principle of relaxation applies with equal force to things mental. When you first meet your man, face to face, there is always the possibility that his surroundings or his personality may give you a strong mental surprise, shock, or blow, or you may be caught off your guard by him saying or doing something you did not expect, or it may come about through a sudden weakening of your confidence in yourself. If this blow, shock, or impression meets you in a tightened, tense, keyed mental and physical condition, it is quite possible that it will strike you hard as to completely unnerve you by making you think that possibly he is superior to you. The instant such a thought enters your mind, you're lost. But if you approach him in a free and easy, nonchalant, relaxing condition, any strong, courage-sapping impression which may strike you won't hurt you in the least, and it won't have any effect upon you more than a smashing fall upon an acrobat. In fact, most of the time you won't even be conscious of it. So right from the start, you will have gained the advantage. Your man, consciously or unconsciously, tried to weaken you and failed. So you're the victor. Yours is a superior mind, and he will know it instantly. Well, those are some good tips there. Obviously, they need to be upgraded by 100 years. But anyway, bbgoddesschurch@gmail.com to donate to our church, and have a great day. God is bless.